It's time for the 360 round. Bitcoin is below 100,000 and has fallen over 10% since inauguration day. To discuss the crypto space, let's bring in our panel. Juan, Senior Investment Strategist at Bitwise Asset Management, and Jim Thorne, Chief Market Strategist at Wellington Altus Private Wealth. Great to have you both here with us, Juan and Jim. Juan, let's start with you. Before we talk about your overall outlook for crypto, especially Bitcoin, I do want to ask you about some of the headlines we've been seeing around the crypto space recently. Most importantly, right now, these headlines around the crypto exchange Bybit being hit by the largest crypto heist in history. It looks like hackers stole approximately $1.5 billion in digital assets, looks like primarily Ether, by compromising Bybit's cold wallet. I guess details aside, we know there's risk when investing in crypto, but how should traders, investors be thinking about hacker risk on top of risk in terms of volatility when investing in these things?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning. This is an unfortunate event, and we've faced this before in the industry. It is high tech, and there's risk involved there. I think that what investors should keep in mind is that the solutions in the U.S. from regulated exchanges such as Coinbase and from the Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs that are provided by issuers such as Bitwise are held in the highest form of security with regulated custodians in the U.S., chartered by U.S. institutions and overseen in the U.S., and that has a much higher threshold of security. And those, exchanges like Coinbase have never been compromised. So Bybit is an unfortunate scenario. It's an exchange outside of the U.S., and those are some of the risks that do exist in the industry. But more and more, the infrastructure is becoming more institutional grade, especially now under this new administration that is really pushing for regulatory clarity. I think that will only make things more secure in the industry going forward.
Okay, and then Jim, regulatory clarity, but then on the other hand, we also see the SEC sort of easing up on some of these exchanges. We saw the news around Coinbase and the SEC walking back its authoritative action against that company. How bullish of catalyst could that be?
Well, I think we're in a period of time where I'll call it the blockchain technology is going to be allowed to evolve, and the private sector is no longer going to be hindered by government regulations, which I think is a huge bullish tailwind for the space. I do agree with the other commentator that, look, exchanges that aren't regulated, that's a big risk. But, in the United States with Coinbase and with the ETFs, as we get more and more institutional grade exchanges and regulations, it should be great. So I am not surprised about what's happening, and yet it hasn't changed my bullish stance on Bitcoin going forward.
And just, Jim, just to clarify, what is your bullish stance? Where is Bitcoin going?
I think we could go to 200,000 by the end of this year. I think we're in a consolidation pattern. If we're looking at Bitcoin right now, and you said it was a stock, it really looks like there's a heavy accumulation under 100,000. It really looks like somebody does not want it to go above 100,000. With President Trump's new administration, with David Sachs, with new regulation, and in the early days of investors understanding that it is a good diversifier of risk in your portfolio, that is Bitcoin, and increases the Sharpe ratio, we're still in the early days.
Okay. Juan, what are your thoughts about where Bitcoin goes from here, and what is it that gets it unstuck from this range?
Yeah, I personally think this is the best time in history to invest in Bitcoin. As Jim was mentioning, Washington has gone from being one of crypto's biggest threats to being one of its biggest champions. And in the latest round of 13F filings, we saw that institutional investors are accumulating Bitcoin at a record pace. They're onboarding it at a record pace. We saw the first in this past 13F, we saw the first allocation to Bitcoin ETFs from the Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is the fourth largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. First time we saw an allocation from sovereign wealth funds. We also saw U.S. states like the Wisconsin Investment Board increase their allocation to Bitcoin ETFs. And we saw institutional ownership of Ethereum ETFs go from 5% to 15%, while institutional ownership of Bitcoin ETFs stands at around 25%. So institutions continue to onboard the space and adopt Bitcoin. And we have, as Jim mentioned, the executive order on digital assets, which is going to allow for the growth of stablecoins and other applications as regulatory clarity emerges. So I think the space is being primed for continued growth this year. At Bitwise, our end of year prediction for the price of Bitcoin is 200,000. So we think there's plenty of upside to happen this year as things continue to unfold.
Sorry, the producer was talking to me just as you gave your target. What is your target for year end? 200,000 as well?
Yeah, 200,000 for Bitcoin is what we have for year end.
Okay, so both pretty bullish price targets there. Jim, going back to you, anything other than Bitcoin you think is good to invest in right now in terms of the crypto space? Would you be buying Ether too?
I prefer Bitcoin over Ether, but it seems as though Wall Street is coalescing around both of them. But when I talk to clients at Wellington, what we do is I suggest Bitcoin should be a core holding in your portfolio along with gold. And I think what you're going to see as we go through the year, Caroline, is people are going to recognize the fact that Bitcoin is the solution to the fiscal crisis, and it's also going to be the solution towards making the U.S. dollar and U.S. Treasuries neutral again and going back to a new monetary system, which I think crypto, or specifically Bitcoin and gold, are going to be part of.
Okay, Bitcoin trading around 94,365 right now, but sounds like, according to both our guests here, it could move a lot higher. Juan Leon, Bitwise Asset Management, Jim Thorne, Wellington Altus Private Wealth. Thank you both so much for joining us.